Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, and everybody in between. She's a little bit Selena, a little bit J-Lo, and a whole lot of Pisces. It's Rocky. And he's a West Side bird with a badass hoodie collection. It's Rooster.
And this is Words and Shit,
The show where you get to know the person behind the poetry.
brought to you by Write Art Out.
Raquel!
Hi.
Hi.
I know. I'm so excited to do this episode with you. This is going to be our first time ever. Usually, for those who are chiming in, Rooster comes in and subs for me, and you are now subbing for Chibi. And so
Yes.
this means I get to speak with you.
This is true. Hold up. Are you frozen right now?
Am I? I don't think I'm frozen.
Oh, okay. I don't know. We'll rock with it. We'll rock with it.
Can you not see me?
I can hear you fine. So like that, and this is basically a talk show. So like, I'll freeze myself and we'll just do it like that. Like, how's that?
All right. Cool.
But how are you feeling today?
I'm feeling great. I'm feeling I'm a little tired. I know that I'm definitely kind of like feeling a little old. I had to do an orientation with some of my students. We were bringing them in for specifically to help us with our social media and TikTok, and I feel kind of old. I'm not gonna lie. I love that for those who just probably didn't see, for who are listening, usually Chibi and I, we have our profiles at the very beginning of this, and I was really surprised that you threw up like a throwback photo of me of when I was like 25. Like, wow.
You used to get on me all the time for catfishing people with like my 25-year-old photo when I was like in my early 30s. And welcome to the club. This is what we do. You have to hang on to the quality selfies. That's really all it is. I feel old too. I have been hosting a poetry workshop with like 13-year-olds the last few days, and they could care less about what I gotta say.
Yeah.
They're really into something called Roblox, which I'd never heard of, which is apparently a computer game. And when I told them that I have no idea what this is, like, you would have thought I didn't know what planet Earth was. Like, they just were just, and we were so like crass about it too. Like, you don't know what Roblox are? And I'm like, listen here, 13-year-old. Okay, I've seen a lot of cool shit in my lifetime, so let's not throw stones. All right.
I know, they really are out there. Just like, they laugh at me where I'm just like Kyrian, and they're just like, ooh, stop. Just, who are you? Like, you're showing your age. I'm like, well, I feel like I'm youthful, right? People really mistaken me for being younger than what I am until I start talking, and they're just like, what decade are you? What? Oh, are you part of the 19? Like, what did I say? Oh, the 1900s. You were born in the 1900s.
Wow. They have no shame.
No shame.
Tragic.
Oh man. But I think, feeling about like pretty old. I feel like we are kind of getting older, but we're still kind of young. But I think, our new guest for the evening, she definitely is not really new to the scene, but she's definitely giving this like new voice of poetry, specifically in Latina poetry that is well needed, right?
Texas.
What?
Yes.
From Houston, right? Or San Antonio, a little bit of Houston. Can we, Rooster, please announce our guest?
Yes. Today we have Analicia Sotelo, who is the author of Virgin, this amazing book right here, the inaugural winner of the Jake Adam New York Prize, selected by Ross Gay for Milkweed Editions 2018, and the chapbook Nonstop Godhead, selected by Rigoberto González for Poetry Society of America. The poem I Am Trying to Write a Poem About a Virgin and It's Awful was selected for Best New Poets 2015 by Tracy K. Smith. Poems have also appeared in the New Yorker, Boston Review, The Nation, Kenyon Review, Poem a Day, and the New England Review. Analicia is a Canto Mundo Fellow and the recipient of the 2016 DISQUIET International Literary Prize. Analicia holds an MFA in poetry from the University of the H-Town. Please give a warm round of applause, audience, for our guest, Analicia Sotelo.
Yeah, I'm really excited. Can't wait.
Absolutely.
I know. I feel like I didn't do the H-Town like hand correctly. It's okay. It's okay. I just feel I don't feel cool today. That's basically what I'm getting at.
I like never, that never works for me. Like I'm not cool enough to make that work like naturally.
Yeah. Like we just try too hard. It's okay. Actually, so I think you're a pretty cool person, and usually we start off this segment is you're gonna be delving into intimate things about yourself, and we just want to do a check-in. So I want to know, like, how's your heart today, friend? How's your heart today? How's your heart this year, this month?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Today, this year, this month. I mean, it's been a crazy year. Today I'm feeling pretty good. My heart's a little like harried, like had a lot of stuff to do and had to run from this to that to this. But I'm really excited about this time right here, like getting to talk to other amazing creative people and be able to just like connect with some new people and see if they like it. If they do, they can reach out to me on social media. And I love to stay in contact with like pretty much anyone who loves writing. So that's what I'm kind of about. That's where my heart is right now. And yeah.
Great.
Awesome. Well, we're very happy to have you. We want to jump right into this segment that we call speed dating, where we're going to ask you just like a quick series of questions, just to kind of, for the audience to kind of get to know you better. And you can feel like, however you feel about answering them, as succinctly or like long as you want to. So my first question, Analicia, is what is your latest obsession? Like, what's something you're finding yourself really obsessed about these days?
Latest obsession. Well, I mean, I'm getting back into my bad reality TV sort of habit. I'm watching The Bachelorette right now, much to certain people's dismay, but whatever, I'm doing it. I love watching stuff about people falling in love, and it's kind of theater, but it's also like, is there something there? And you get to like decide which characters might be together and watch things unfold, and you inevitably get to see somebody behave badly and ruin everything. So I love that. And I'm also really obsessed with like creatively, I'm really obsessed with oranges right now. I have no idea what it means yet, but my great-grandparents, they had like a beautiful orange tree in their like backyard. It was beautiful to me, but in retrospect, like I don't even know how beautiful it was. But it's like so big and looming and amazing. And so I'm kind of doing that right now, like playing with like Secret Garden kind of a feel and seeing what unfolds. So.
All right.
Great. I know. I feel like you don't know Rooster, but Rooster definitely has like an orange tree in the backyard. He's been taking a lot of like selfies, so I definitely could understand. I feel like I'm left out. I feel like I should have some type of orange tree to relate to. It's okay. It's not late.
It'll happen when it needs to happen, and then you're going to remember this.
Yes, I will, and I'll tag you in my little selfie. All right. So next, like for my question, so what is your current favorite overused word? It can be both in English and Spanish, either way.
Okay, favorite overused word, English or Spanish? I mean, there's just so many. I think phrases right now are kind of what I'm loving the most. So lately I've been saying like, I'm not loving this, like all this, I'm not loving it. It's a way of like coping with like, okay, that's crazy, and these are the things that I'm going to enjoy. But I love all sorts of crazy little words. I mean, I love when people use the phrase like the word delicious to describe things that shouldn't really be delicious in any context. It's just a fun time.
Okay. All right. I see that. All right. So for this question, it doesn't have to be very deep, but it can be if you'd like. What is something you have been putting off that you need to get to?
Okay. Well, probably writing poems. I'm writing them. I am writing them, but it's like I've gotten to the point where I need to be good with myself and have all my things in order before I can do that, and so got to take care of the day-to-day stuff, got to like do my health stuff, assorted things, catch up with family and friends, like make sure that balance is there. And then I can really focus on creating things, and kind of going into some of the like, how to put it, some of those darker spaces. Sometimes navigating writing and creativity, at least for me, is very much about figuring out like how to sort of swim through that darkness and still come out into the light and be like, I'm still me.
Totally.
But go in and like adventure through those subterranean aspects of the self that you wouldn't even expect. So to do all that, you kind of have to be, I feel like, emotionally ready to do that. Almost like you're in track. You need to prepare for that long distance run. And so that's kind of where I'm at right now, is doing my little exercises to kind of get ready.
No, absolutely. It's like the work-life balance is one thing, but then also like artist creative balance is like a whole other element to it, and it disrupts all types of things. So I totally understand what you're talking about.
All right. So this is our final question. And I feel like it's a classic one. But if you could have dinner with anyone, it could be alive, or they could be dead, who would it be, and what are you eating with them?
So it would be my boyfriend, who's the most amazing cook. So I feel super lucky. Like after we talk, I get to go and eat something made fresh at home. And my favorite thing to have that dinner would be, oh gosh, there's so many things. I absolutely love food of all kinds, all cuisines. And the nice thing about being in Houston is you can have your selection of pretty much anything you could ever wonder about. So anyway, so he can also make a lot of different cuisines, but my favorite is, my personal favorite food item is mole enchiladas. But I mean, the options are limitless. So.
And how do you do? I want like in these mole, because mole is a little different between different people, right? They put a little bit more chocolate, a little bit more peanut butter or peanuts, or like a little bit more spice. Like how does the mole taste for you?
Oh, that's a good one. I mean, I like a good amount of spice, but I also am sadly Americanized in that I really want a little bit of like mozzarella cheese on it, even though I know that's not as traditional. But I'll take any kind of mole anywhere. Like the amount of work that has to go into making it, and all these different people put all their soul and energy into something, like it's really incredible. And so it just feels like this special thing.
Okay, great. I know. I'm like now starting to get a little hungry. I feel like there's not good mole or good like true Mexican food, or more like Tex-Mex food here in New York. So I always, indulge people when they want to talk about Mexican food.
Thanks.
All right. So that concludes our portion of speed dating. So we're actually going to transition to your first poem, right? We're here to hear your words. So those who are here in the Facebook Live and also for YouTube, this is your chance to shine. Please, if you hear anything in the poems that either really vibrate with you, use the comment section just to give some love, give some hollers, some virtual snaps. If you have any questions or you just like really feel aligned, do it. Go for it. Go into the comment section. And yeah, maybe you can take it away. This is going to be great.
Awesome. So I'm going to go ahead and, speaking of enchiladas, I'm going to go with this poem called Family Portrait with Enchiladas and a Movie. And, we were just kind of talking about our age range. And for me, when I was young, the movie Twister was just this movie I'd watch over and over with my family. And so that kind of inspired some of this that you're going to hear now. So we'll see what you think. I hope you like it. All right. Picture this. My heart as thick orange as manteca as we turn on Twister for what has to be the 16th time since 1996. And my parents are tired of it now, but I really begged for it for the sake of tradition. Helen and Bill embarrassingly in love, the wind turning in circles, like the witch is at it again, the Philip Seymour Hoffman witch, with hair like herbicide wheat fields and a ceremonious voice that slices right through metal. When we have enchiladas for dinner, I can't help it. I have 2, then 3, then 4.5 servings with rice and even the beans swimming in their curls of gelatinous bacon and comino. Each piece hangs in the stew like a comma. Like a coconut, Dad says, of my eating habits, but I had to save room for cheese, piled high and sharp, melting right into my personal nostalgia. Meanwhile, I will celebrate enchiladas, those mounds of earth going straight to the confused gut, the gut with no country. Doesn't Alexa Vega, the light-skinned Latina from Spy Kids, play the Oklahoma girl who sees her father ascend the F5 god, later played by Helen? Her hair is like my sister's, a sweet golden brown that confuses people, but she's the first to rant about white privilege at dinner, swinging her fork around like a squall until you're at one end of the table only to end up at the other, exactly like a helpless cow. Growing up, Dad would turn on the surround sound as we took cover under the colchas, an average storm outside, our apartment small but sonically ambitious, and the threat not exactly there, but they're all the same. We've never forgotten what could have happened and could still happen at any time and with no warning, sending us right into that Midwestern debris where the basements are filled with strange blank faces that rise, heavy as spoonfuls on spoonfuls of bodies. Does nature think we're in the way, or is it trying to solve a curiosity? Have we been chased into the eye of the eye, the fat luxury of the eye? So that was that.
Hey,
Hey.
awesome. Thank you so much. So I kind of want to dive right in because after reading Virgin and then hearing this piece, I noticed that, and not just your work, but also like the work of like Jose Olvidares and Carlos Cordero and a few other poets who I know. It's like there's this new generation of Mexican American, Latino, Latinx American writers who return to like nostalgia of Americanness, as opposed to like previous generations of writers and poets who kind of would take it back to like traditional or other countries or our own mythologies and stuff like that. I guess my question is like, how do you feel about that? Like, yeah, like.
What an amazing question. I love that you're picking up on that. And, you know, I think especially with this poem, some of the things that I was wrestling with were there's just a lot that's lost between generations, but there's also a lot of guilt. And then there's also things to celebrate, right? If you're a family and you're home and you're eating enchiladas that are home cooked, spending time with, that's something to celebrate. But then there's also this like these other threads, right, of things that were lost, or little teasing. Like there's this one part in this poem that has you know, the teasing about being a coconut, which I feel like is an act of realism. Like people would say that, you know, and so, part of that is about, you know, trying to decide, I think, what makes me feel connected to my family traditions, and what is it about this, you know, like, is it about cheese or no cheese? Is it about knowing all the layers and hearing the family stories and, you know, getting to know kind of the cultural traditions with each generation? Because, you know, in the first generation, it might be like, okay, this is how, these are the kinds of things we cook. And the second generation could be like, okay, well, we could never afford the extras, so it's just beans. Third generation, maybe it was like, we can get whatever we want. Hopefully, you know, if things kind of work out and there's some stability, and we can also explore new foods like sushi, if, you know. So it's, I think for me and for some of those other writers, something I'm noticing is there's an interrogation of these things with a sense of humor, but also with a sense of balance. Like the story is not one narrative, it's a story of multiple narratives. And like, how can we speak to some of that complexity while also celebrating, and then while also going, there's a lot of sort of issues underneath everything that's happening. So I do love Jose's work a lot. And so I see what you mean there. And I don't know, I'm just excited thinking about Jose's work. But food is certainly something that is an access point that we all share. And I feel like it's limitless what you could say about it. Like we could keep writing and writing about food and there would still be something to uncover. So
I really, really appreciate that, you know, your answer. You know, because what really kind of going off of what you're saying, you know, Rooster's question was, I think the Alexa Vega line in your poem really got me, because I definitely watched Spy Kids, right? And I think to me, Spy Kids was always just like, oh my God, this like Latino family, you know, they're very white passing, but they're like there, you know. And you're even having her question her like her whiteness and her privilege, right, in this American culture, and like also negating like negotiating what it also means to be Mexican American and how like there can be passing and privilege in that. You know, and I think Alexa Vega is just a great millennial like Latina, right, to kind of embody this new generation of Latinas. And then speaking of that and that subject of like Latinas, you know, I think everyone has an idea of what an more traditional Latinas or what the narrative of Latinas should be. And I think definitely in your writing you push that. And I kind of want to see like, know what kind of, if you could describe what kind of Latina you are, like self-identify or basically what kind of Latina do you want to portray to your audience?
Oh gosh, yeah, that's a really great question. Kind of Latina I am right now. I mean, I feel, gosh, so many things are running through my head right now. You know, I think it's really important if you're going to be like, if for me, just for me, this is my personal experience. If you're going to call yourself Latina, that means that you look for other Latinas to support, or you find ways to like share what you learned and like and conduct some mentorship. And I think about that too with kind of the term Chicana, which I know has another history, and like I don't want to claim a historical period that I wasn't really growing up in, but some of my best mentors were Chicana feminists of all kinds, and they really showed me that you pass on a kind of love. And some people use the term, I guess, chosen family, but I think whether or not you use that term, there's still a way of finding people in your community that you connect with, that you want to give to. And so that's how I approach that term for me. You know, I also like really care about language, history. And sometimes some of my poems don't really talk about necessarily like Mexican history or mythologies, but it's all up in the air because I'm starting to write some poems about that, and sometimes I never know what's going to unfold. So like for the question of the kind of Latina to portray, I guess for me the biggest thing I was trying to solve for was that when I was trying to write this book, I kept feeling like the poems that I was writing were not delivering to the other people in a way where they really understood what I was trying to accomplish. And I think part of that was the execution of them, and just like learning how to write a poem. But I think another part of that is that there's not really a cultural expectation of something beyond the sort of Latina stereotype. Because if, you know, and this would work for other cultures as well, I think, just depends on the situation. But the portrayal of like a Latina as very sensual, or the portrayal of a Latina as like a good Catholic girl, or, you know, it's along the dichotomy. It's really influenced by Spanish colonialism and the violences that ensued. And so for me, it was important that I write characters that felt authentic to me. And in the writing, I tried not to put an intention on it, because I noticed that when I put an intention on the writing, it comes off as too try hard, or it comes off as like defensive. And instead, I just want to swim in a world that feels like the character that I'm creating and see what happens. And so when I started to shift to that, what came forth was a highly intellectual type character, somebody who's interested in philosophy or interested in, you know, different cultural things, and isn't necessarily tied to one perception of the self, isn't necessarily central and isn't necessarily virginal, but is somewhere in between and complicated and messy with it. But mostly this idea of the intellect, I think, was the most important thing for me to explore with this character, this person that's in the book, because I just felt like in my personal interactions in different spaces, sometimes white spaces, there's this I don't know. So I don't want to like make assumptions. But sometimes I would get like, comments like, oh, you're innocent, or, oh, you don't have what it takes to be a writer, and stuff like that, where I just felt like this is because of a lot of different things. One of them might be that I'm just like smiley. Who knows? I am very innocent in some ways as well. But it led me to this investigation of like virginity as a concept. Like, what if there could be a new landscape where you got to see inside the mind of somebody who was authentically a Latina, but might be a different experience than you're expecting.
Yeah. What? I'm just already like, I'm already heated for you. Like, wow, the audacity of some people are like, you're just too innocent to write. You can't even like write the hardships of your life. Which I think it's just very kind of tongue in cheek that you were to write your collection called Virgin, right? I think that it definitely is a way of saying like, all right, cool, you're gonna call me a virgin, but you're also looking and investigating the complexities of what it is to be a virgin, especially within like the Latina like scope of things. So I'm like really upset for you. I'm already heated. Like, tell me their names. Tell me their names. I'll go.
I know, we just have a whole separate conversation. No, it's like, I think part of it is, it's like when people insult with jokes, or people that like little like negging style, just people when they're in environments that are creative environments, I feel like sometimes they like misbehave a little for fun. But it like, for me, that wasn't the point. The real point was like, God, well, I'm about to show you what it looks like,
Yeah.
No, totally. I think there's a line in a poem that really stood out to me in your book. It is "My English Victorian Dating Troubles." And you have this line at the end, or a few lines, where you say, "Oh, gentlemen, I am the angel whore of kale chips. I like to purchase as I please. I am completely in character, so I'll accept your pearls, though I may cut them off with my teeth." And it's like, I think it's this power, like, to your point, it's really interesting how you, even with like kale chips in that simple like idea in this whole book about a virgin and a Latina who has to navigate these spaces. I guess my question is you also got your MFA from the University of Houston. How was navigating that space with maybe some of these ideas, or sort of like presenting it in academic settings where a lot of times it is white and it is men, and you're kind of coming in as like, I'm not maybe the Chicano poetry you've heard, or I'm not, what is traditionally seen as Mexican American poetry. This is sort of like the Spy Kids generation of like Latino poetry, and
Yeah, I just love that so much. It's hilarious. Yeah, okay. Well, and I think everyone's experience is different, and one of the things that I love so much about spoken word and slam and the communities that they build around them is that, like, I didn't grow up in that, like my first encounter was well after grad school, and I went to Write About Now, and I was just amazed by how it felt to be there. Like, that impressed me. Like, someone walked up to me and they were like, "Hey, who are you? Let's talk. Let's be cool." And it was so friendly, and it was just this warm, giving environment. Like, there are people of all different shapes, colors, and sizes too. I didn't realize like that I was in an environment that didn't have a lot of size ranges, right?
Mm-hmm.
A lot of gender identity ranges. And it was just such a relief to be in that environment. So I'll put that as context for the experience. But, I think I had a good education at, I felt excited to be able to, mostly to be around my peers. Like, I had a lot of really amazing, talented peers that I respect and admire that I met through the program. But the classes themselves were a little more, weren't really about necessarily, approaching your work from the point of your culture or the point of your feelings, right? The model is sort of framed so that you approach the work as work, which is like a very different way of doing things. And that's what I was in. So I don't think I was even really aware when I was in grad school of these things. I think I was just trying to survive, to learn how to live in Houston without my family, which as a Latina and growing up with a close family, it was very difficult. So trying to figure that part out, trying to figure out like adult loneliness and what that looks like, trying to figure out all these other people who are at different stages of their life. And so I didn't even think about publishing or anything like that. And I think I wrote really not terrible, but not my best poems in my grad program because I was still like practicing how to do the skills or how to, learn about the history of different pieces. And then when I left, that's when I started writing work like this. So I actually wrote a version of this manuscript in graduate school that I trashed, and I started over. And I think sometimes when you're creating work, it's important to remember that sometimes you need a little healing before you can really get into some of the things that you're trying to get into. And you're like just not ready to write about them yet. You're like you keep trying, and it's not landing. And for me, they were really abstract, and they were about love or sorrow or some abstraction of something that I was trying to talk about. And then when I left and I graduated and I was on my own and nobody was really there except for a couple of really good friends, that's when I started going, well, I'm just going to say things directly and let myself discover things and not be sort of the hero of my own poems and see what happens. Get messy, get weird, and treat the art as art and not always as if it's wholly about me, even though it's inspired by my life.
Right on.
I don't know if I answered your question. I mean,
no, you totally did. Absolutely. I think, yes, you did. Because when you brought in Right About Now, I kind of immediately understand what you're saying. Like, I've been there plenty of times. I love it, and shout out to them. They do have a much more diverse space, and it's kind of like for anyone who hasn't been there, it's a great place where if you are a poet who has ever just existed in sort of like, I don't know, like your own, like, so for me in San Antonio, we live in our own sort of nucleus of just like San Antonio poets, and this is how we are. And then to go to Houston, I can still be authentically San Antonio, but then at the same time there, it's like everyone is their own authentic self. And it's like a beautiful way to sort of rethink just writing and persona and the voice in your poem and everything from rip. So I totally agree with what you're saying.
Yeah, I definitely. And if you don't even answer our questions, just to let you know, like, it's okay. It's your show. You can go as many tangents as you want. Okay. I think this is a great segue to go and listen to another poem of yours, and you can bless us with that.
All right. Well, I'm really excited. We were just talking about navigating white spaces and kind of, and I feel like Jose Olivares has really good poems that are kind of about this too, where there's like some of us grew up with Chicano poetry as our elders passed that on to us, and we have a lot of respect for that, and they talked about a lot of things that are important, but then it's like, where do I fit? What's my Spy Kids approach? What am I going to write about that feels true to the experience? And so I didn't really have, in graduate school, I didn't feel like I had the opportunity to write about, I didn't feel motivated to write about my culture in grad school because the space itself didn't give me that receptive energy of working off of it. So for example, I went to another residency where I met 4 to 5 Latinas from all over the nation. And it didn't even matter. It's not like we prompted each other and we were like, hey, write a poem about your experience. But being in that environment made me feel excited about talking about some of those things. So my work has shifted a little bit because of that, at least the recent stuff. So this one is called The Most Important Word in This Language. And if you are a heritage speaker, which would mean that you can understand Spanish, but you can't speak it fluently, right? Maybe you can carry on a conversation in a market or in an Uber if you have to, but really you don't speak it fluently. And it's something that happens second and third and fourth generation for a variety of historical reasons, which include some of our parents and grandparents being told not to speak Spanish in schools, right? And so this poem is about a pact I made with myself that I did not make come true which was that I would learn how to speak Spanish so I could speak to my great-grandparents. And it's just too late, and they passed away. And this is my poem in honor of all that. The most important word in this language is miércoles, ¿verdad? In English, miércoles. In Spanish, miércoles. What difference does it make? It was the first word I ever learned from my great-grandfather, light on the tongue, better than the day it describes. My shoes crouching behind the door, where the calendar hung onto its days, as if each day were another clue. The pesos were dark with each day, the coins did not move, dark like moss on the dresser. The thin printed medals of saints were sometimes indistinguishable from others. Miracles, miércoles, miracles. Here's a riddle. The dress is not a house, but a shore. And the lace of my great-grandmother's hair is the water from the stovepat, embroidered and hung on the wall. A rosary, her hair one thick wavelength, a waterfall of white. A rosary as large as a person is something to pray for. Miércoles, if I had kept my promise to myself, I would already understand in 2 languages what their lives were like, what our lives could be like. I think I remember an automat or a hotel with string-bearing celebrities. I think I remember Friday with the marigolds and the orange tree bearing small worlds loved by ants. But it was miércoles. The most beautiful word in our language is the one that takes us and leaves us at the end of every afternoon with a merienda, while the lace grows stiff at the dining room table under the plastic, under the condensation under the plastic. ¿Qué quieres, mija? Quiero un miércoles y otro, otro, otro. So,
Yo, totally can relate as a heritage speaker.
I
Yes.
know. I was like, oh man. I don't think I've ever really, maybe I once or twice, but heritage speaker. I think that is so poignant, and thank you for, I guess, giving us that language, because so many of us, especially in Texas or even multiple generations, they just don't know how to speak Spanish fluently. I recently was like trying to order Dominican food, and the person I was with, he was just like, oh, can you order for us? And then I'm like speaking to, first of all, Dominican Spanish is like super fast, right? And I don't even know. And I'm like, in my broken Spanish, and he's like, oh, I thought you knew Spanish. I'm like, no, I don't. I'll roll my R's pretty, but I don't. And I think that's those moments are so relatable. So thank you for that poem.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Yeah, I mean, it's true. There's a lot of people who have this experience. Yeah, and it's like, that's the kind of stuff I'd like to write about, is the in-between stuff that you can't quite put your finger on, and you're like, there's something here, and it's a weird experience, right? And then when you write it, you meet people, and you're like, oh, there's a lot of people who had this experience too.
Yeah, and I was thinking about, I'm sorry, Chris, or Mr.
No, go ahead.
Because you were talking about this residency, right? And I know that you were also a Canto Mundo fellow, right? And then one of the main founders, or I guess the main fellows that are running the organization, is Norma Cantu, who is like a well-known Chicana, like writer, poet, and I can just imagine, like, when you were talking about like these prompts or being amongst like other like Chicanas who were there, and who are maybe not part of the movement, but were definitely influenced maybe a generation afterwards, and how the poem that you just shared with us really kind of correlates with you can be Chicana or you can be Latina in a different sense. And I guess how did it feel like to really to be in, like, for example, one of those organizations like Canto Mundo, and navigating what it is to have like a different Latina or Chicana voice than that?
Okay, yeah, that's a really great one. Well, I mean, and I think, it's about context too, because, in San Antonio, I was always very shy, so I didn't go a lot. I changed later, but when I was younger in San Antonio, I wasn't like out and about going to all the events. So, but the little contact I had was like Trinity University. There were tons of amazing there's actually tons of amazing Latina mentors at Trinity. Like, it's crazy. Like, if you're looking to figure out what college you want to go to, you know, it's hella expensive. You'll probably go into debt. I went into debt, but we do have amazing mentors there. Anyway, and right now Norma's there, so if you're looking, definitely go there. But she was there after I was there. Anyway, the main point is that the Chicano and Chicana poetry that I received from there was very like celebratory of the region, or it was very much true to one's culture and an exploration of that culture. And so I kind of thought that was it. I didn't know, and I didn't get taught a lot of different kinds of literatures except in my Trinity courses, ironically, even though it's a very white space. That's where I got all my learnings. And so when I went to Canto Mundo, I wasn't sure what was going to happen. But I had read some writers, and I had read Marcelo Castillo, and I had read, gosh, there's so many, Vanessa Villarreal, and then I knew Sarah Borjas from another residency that I went to. And so I knew that people were doing work that either it was all mixed together. It's a little bit about the culture, it's a little bit about just love, or it was about whatever it was. And so when I went there, I was a little nervous because I was, I don't know, if I'm cool enough, since I was kind of shy for a while, if I'm with it. But honestly, there was nothing to be nervous about, because it was so amazing to see how many different people from, Latin America is that's all I'm gonna say. It's a big, and there's all sorts of different cultural identities from within that. So my favorite part was just listening to people's different accents, reading the references that even I didn't understand, because maybe they were Cuban or maybe they were Puerto Rican or whatever it was. And so it really felt like this transnational movement of voices that has been collecting for a long time. This is the first time that with social media, there's been a democratization of access. And so being in those spaces, like, well, we've all been here. The only difference is that before we were not published. But we're all here. Some of us are writing, if we're chefs, like there's those chefs that make like food into foam. Those chefs that like do the foam thing. Like there's Latina writers who write like that. And then there's that write like, you're at home, you're having a nice dinner, and they write like that, and so there's such a beautiful range of aesthetic possibilities.
No, absolutely.
It's like, in your words, that is delicious. I want to say delicious.
We actually got a comment that I want to share because it was really good. Beautiful poem from Mary Shakespeare. Beautiful poem. I hope someday my girls who are half Mexican and Liberian could find the beauty, heritage, and stories in both languages as well. So yes, I think you key into something really interesting too, because going to Canto Mundo in a space where it's like you said, like transnational, and there's absolutely an amazing transnational movement of Latino, Latinx poetics and academics and such, just kind of becoming more breaking into the zeitgeist, I guess, and breaking into the publishing. But I think what's also different from, as opposed to previous generations, is like, speaking to your poem, is like knowing Spanish and knowing certain parts of the culture was also a way of sort of qualifying brownness. And I don't necessarily see that so much anymore. But I think it's to your point, like, it's because we all kind of, our own family histories now extend past just our cultural histories, where you have Latinos in Detroit because they had to work over there. You had people in Seattle and stuff. I don't know where I was going with that, but I think it was just more or less to say, like, I completely agree with what you're saying, and I think Spanish as a root is not necessarily the qualifier that it used to be, where now you have poets such as yourself who can talk about sushi and Houston life and the movie Twister, which is an amazing movie, by the way.
Yay! Well, yeah, and that reminds me, again, context, because when poets were they wanted to create almost like a story around brownness. And I think part of that was because it was a completely different lifestyle, decade, And I think in our parents' and grandparents' generation, it depends, depends on when, if you have an immigrant family, when they immigrated to America, or or United States, or it depends on just, skin tone and kind of the kind of like prejudice that can come from that. But I think a lot of that generation that was writing about brownness was trying to be like, you know what, I'm going to write about this and you cannot stop me from writing about it, because they weren't getting published anywhere, and they had to create their own journals, or they had to create their own ways in the world. And I think, maybe, I kind of think that when we write, we're not really writing alone, we're writing as a collective. I know it's going to sound like really woo-woo, but I really think that we affect each other. And so if there's commonalities in what we're interested in, that's because our experience have commonalities. And so for the other generation, a big thing in common was not being the same. Big thing in common might be getting prejudice for skin color, not getting into restaurants. There's a strong history of mistreatment. So, for the ones of us who are like in our little family homes, just hearing the stories, it's a different kind of literature.
Yeah. I definitely also wanted to like kind of note that, I think now when we think about Latina or Latinx literature, it's not just in the scope of brownness, because that's what a lot of people have been challenging, that it's like when you say brownness, you're also excluding like Afro-Latinas and the blackness within it too. So I think there's even more conversations of like, it's not black or brown, it's black and brown, or it's indigenous too. And I think that's what your poetry is also like challenging those notions, that it can't just be one superman narrative. We're not a monolith. And so it's the same thing with our color. Our color is not just one color. It's just have a vibrancy of different backgrounds and histories. So
yeah, and also economic experience too.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, there's just so many ways in which social inequities impact experience. And when I think, I don't know, I was always attracted to poetry for its ability to take you into someone else's heart and mind, just for a minute. And even if you didn't share their experience, something in what they said resonated with you. And it just creates this, it kind of opens a door. I think of it similarly to when you hear a story from someone you're kind of maybe judging because they're different from you, and you hear a story from them and you go, oh, I didn't expect that you grew up in poverty. Didn't know that. Well, no. Like there's layers to our human experience. And so I love celebrating, and I love the poems that are like, hey, you should respect my culture and you need to get with the times. Like I love and honor and celebrate those poems as well. A different way of navigating it.
I do. I think it's just, for whatever, everyone's opinion is. So I've been right now just reading The Brief and Wondrous Life of Oscar Wilde. And, we have our discussions about Diaz and his behavior and where's that in line. But I think, it's been really researching contemporary Latina like literature, because it's not that typical narrative, just like you're writing, right? It's not this immigrant narrative. It basically jumps around with different vignettes, but also centralizes this U.S. American experience, and that's where it starts from, instead of going back to like the motherland, right? And talking about those different economic differences too. And I think that's what our people are about. Like, we are not just this immigrants, or we're not starting from the bottom. Like, there's so many of us in the spectrum. So thank you for contributing that.
Of course. And I should add too that, like, I don't know how y'all are feeling on this, so let me know, but like even in like if you're gonna write a book about a nerd, which is essentially part of what that book is about, and then or just a poem about a relationship and you don't have any, I just kind of feel like some of some of that motherland and some of that history, it comes through anyway, even if it's not super overt. Like in my work, a lot of it comes through the family attachment.
Yes.
You know, for someone who's from another culture, they might not have an interrogation of that, right?
Mm-hmm.
There might not be a big looming mother character, right? Who expands the universe, right? And so if it's kind of like, I feel like part of it is like, if you know, there's like kind of codedness to even some of the stuff that's not directly about something, it's in there.
Mm.
Like you can't get away from it, and it's just a part of you no matter what. But
No, absolutely. Kind of staying on this, but also shifting gears a little bit. I feel like Virgin challenges these notions of like being a Latina and sort of the complicated relationship as a hyphenated American in the United States. But one other thing that I really feel like it touches on, and if I'm wrong, let me know. But it's kind of really challenging patriarchy, but more to the point, almost like machismo, because you have some of these poems that really speak about men in these challenging ways that are great, but you do it with this very subtle touch where it's like you call out shit, but then you also kind of are like, you're just kind of showing it for what it is. And I really am fascinated to just kind of see how you feel about what I just said.
yeah, no, I took it. I love y'all's questions. Yeah, I mean, let's talk about machismo a little bit. No, you know, it's so hard because I think we all go through some kind of version of trauma, and some of us go through actual, like, you know, trauma label, like serious stuff, and some of us go through like a kind of another version, or I wish there was another word, but we carry things. That's what I'm trying to say. And so, I think like part of the book is also about like an absent father and what that can do to kind of the psyche as you're trying to kind of connect with other people. It's always in the back of your head, like, I can't trust this, you know? And so I think that trauma, as a person and as an artist, that was something that I was trying to figure out. And that led to a lot of anger, right? A lot of anger about the different experiences I was having, or things that would set me off. But at the same time, as an artist, I also believe in a sense of balance. And like, I feel like if I have a poem that's just like a man-hating poem, which, trust me, I have written many, right? But what is it giving back to me? Aside from like being right about being like, and this is all like, it depends on your situation. Some people have violent, traumatic situations, and that's kind of not what I'm talking about. I'm kind of talking about like just being annoyed with men. That's kind of, and the way that sometimes they act, or you know, the way that they sometimes because of just all the social considerations of masculinity, there is this kind of, I think, air of maybe egotisticalness, or air of like, you really can't possibly know that much, and you're kind of like down here in terms of what you know, and I'm like up here. And that's just like my personal experience of how I navigated some of the situations. But at the same time, it's like, I feel like the poem is almost like a mirror. It's almost like not the Harry Potter mirror where he sees his parents, but like a different kind of truth mirror, where a truly great poem is going to show you all the sides of yourself, the good stuff and the bad stuff, or the stuff you didn't even know was in there. Like some of these poems, I discovered that I was angrier than I even thought I was. And some of them I discovered that like, oh, you know, gosh, maybe this wasn't about the men. Maybe this was about my own level of like distance. You know, maybe there was something like that. Like maybe I was attracting people because I was distant and I didn't really believe I could trust them. Therefore, I was attracting all the untrustworthy ones, right? So I guess all that to say, like, I do firmly believe that we should be talking about stuff that we feel like we can't talk about. And one of those things that I wanted to talk about was how men sometimes treat women, you know? and how in history not that much has changed. Like there's one poem where I forgot what it is, but it's talking about where men still love girls but rarely admit it.
Mm.
And you know, there's some Victorian elements to the poems, and part of that is about that. It's about, yeah, we're making some progress, but there's still this thread here. There's still a way in which the innocent or the angel in the house of Victorian times has persisted and has become a part of my culture somehow. You know, like that has led to this like virginal whatever. And so anyway, if you're writing out there or something like that, like I don't do with this what you will. It may not work for you, but for me, if I'm writing the poem and I've already decided who I want to be in the poem, then it's not going to be good. And if I'm writing a poem and I don't know what's going to happen, and I might not look good, and my grandma might not like the poem, and my mom might not even talk about it. But at the end, if I've done something like different than that I'm surprised, then it's art. So that's just how I see it.
Absolutely. And in a way, it's like you, in your book in particular, in a way that I haven't really seen, so like kudos to you, is like you talk about it in a kind of like, especially machismo, and sort of like portray men behaving badly in a way that I have seen as well, where it's like it's kind of like the open secret. Like everyone knows that like grandpa's got secret families, but we don't talk about it. Or that the guy at the barbecue is like kissing some other guy's fiance, but you know, hey, they were drinking Bud Light and you know, relax. And it's this really fascinating sort of display of it in I guess what I would attribute it to is like the poet Naomi Shabnai, who I'm a humongous fan of, where it's like, she's the best. And like, it's that subtleness where it's attractive in the sense of like, I got to go back to that. Like, what it raises more questions and is more fascinating, and it's a different way of challenging it, as opposed to just kind of like putting it all on a plate and being like, this machismo shit is bad, you know. So yeah, totally.
Yeah, I take that. I do love subtlety, and I think that's a thing too. It's like we're talking about foam poets versus everyday food poets, but I think subtlety is not for everyone. Like for me, I love it. You know, I love getting into the details of it and like the contradictions. Like, what if in a poem someone behaves extremely badly and then they save like an elderly woman from falling down the street? Like, what do you do with that? That kind of complexity of human life,
right?
You know? Like none of us are perfect, and some things need to change at the same time. So
totally. Well, we appreciate you so much for being here. Let's kind of just, if you could please end us with one more piece.
Okay.
Right, thank you.
I'll read this poem. Okay, speaking of kind of trying to write something where you might not look good in it and seeing what happens, I wrote this poem. Can I use curse words on this?
Oh, of course. That's why we have words and shit. Like, yes.
I wasn't sure. I don't know. Okay. So it's called Bitch Instinct. And when I started writing this poem, I was kind of thinking about, I don't know what I was thinking about. I was like trying to get to like a kind of sensuality, and this is what unfolded. Before this day, I loved like an animal loves a human, with no way to articulate how my bones felt in bed or how a telephone felt so strange in my paw. Oh, Papa, I called out to no one, but no one understood. I didn't even. I wanted to be caught. Like, let me walk beside you on my favorite leash. Let my hair grow long and wild so you can comb it in the off hours. Be tender to me. Also, let me eat the meals you do not finish so I can acclimate, climb into the way you claim this world. Once I followed married men, eager for shelter, my fur curled, my lust freshly showered. I called out grief. They heard beauty. I called out why. They said because I can and will. One smile could sustain me for a week. I was that hungry. Lithe and giddy, my skin carried the ether of a so-so self-esteem. I felt fine. I was fine, but I was also looking for scraps. I wanted them all to pet me. You think because I am a woman, I cannot call myself a dog? Look at my sweet canine mind, my long black tongue. I know what I'm doing. When you're with the wrong person, you start barking. But with you, I am looking out this car window with a heightened sense I've always owned. Oh, every animal knows when something is wrong. Of this tender feeling, I was wrong, and I was right, and I was wrong. So,
Thank you.
That was
Thank you.
great.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And thank you just so much for being on the show, Analicia. We really enjoyed having you so much. For all the audience members who are here, you can follow on social media, Tip the Poet as well. If you have any questions about merch, booking, and more, AnaliciaSotelo.com. Thank you so much. We greatly are happy that you came through.
thank you so much. Amazing questions. I love this that you've created, and I appreciate it.
No
Not a
problem.
problem.
Thank you. It was a pleasure. Absolute pleasure.
Totally. All right. And Raquel, how do you feel?
Rooster.
That was great.
That was really great. No, I really enjoyed myself. I always really love speaking to new poets that I'm not quite familiar with and really getting to know them. I think that's the whole platform of Words and Shit, is to get to know the poets. As Chibi was saying, get to know the person behind the poetry, right? I feel I always really love speaking to other Latina writers and poets. It just there's a different way of relating to them, kind of feeling like home. And I think this generation, or I think the term Spy Kids generation with Alexa Vega really hit home for me. And with that negotiation of like identity as being born in the United States and still being Latina, and creating this narrative that's different, compared to what we've been used to, or what we've been reading in academia or in the past. So that's where I'm at.
No, absolutely. It was a great time. And with that concludes the show. Let's pay some bills. Rocky, thank you to the audience.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you to the audience. And if you want to follow us on IG or on Twitter, it's at Words and Shh. Okay.
And be sure that if you have missed any episodes, you can always watch past episodes on YouTube or podcast, which is on every basic major streaming service.
Mm-hmm.
And what's going on next week?
Oh my goodness, next week. You can come back to next week, same time, same place. It's going to be a little different. It's going to be a little surprise for you. We're going to be live somewhere. I mean, we're already live, but like live. So just gotta check us out, because it's gonna be a special show, and you'll just have to figure out where Chibi's gonna be for the show.
Absolutely. Well, thank you to everyone who came out. Thank you, Raquel, for indulging me as Chibi's fill-in.
That was great. You did really great. You did good.
Much appreciated. Y'all be great.
All right. Bye, y'all. Be safe.